United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing for a second here while we do the invocation. We gathered together here today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faiths give us the strength to act honestly and well in the matters before us. Thank you. All righty. First up on the agenda is the minutes from both our meeting and the meeting with town council. Does anyone have any comments or changes they'd like to see? No?
I just
Yes.
have one small thing,
Okay.
not earth-shattering. On the bottom of page 4 in the joint meeting, the second to last sentence, it says LPA member Smith suggested, and I don't want to besmirch LPA member Smith with my radical thoughts, but it was actually LPA member Adderholt who said that comment on the bottom of page 4.
LPA member Smith suggested that getting rid of the post-disaster was good public policy and created an incentive for pre-disaster.
Right.
That needs to be changed to LPA member Adderholt.
Please.
Is that true, Mr. Smith?
Wasn't me?
Okay.
That was a very long meeting. I hope everyone paid attention to what they said, because there's a lot here. Any other changes? Comments? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting minutes from both meeting, local planning agency, regular meeting, and joint session are approved. All right. As amended. Thank you. He keeps me out of trouble. Do you want to swear everybody in one at a time or all as a whole?
I find it easier to do them as a whole.
Okay.
Just that as each item gets called, please remember to disclose any ex parte communications you may have had with respect to that particular item on the agenda. If anyone's going to swear, to testify this morning, please stand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Witnesses have been sworn.
Okay, we're going to open the public hearing on the text amendment for engineering standards and construction details.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Jason Green, Community Development. This has been before you before, and so then we paired up the two parts that we were talking about, the text amendment related to the code, land development code, to remove duplication of language and to clean up things that are now, I guess what I'll say is in pictorial form, essentially in the details. And you also have the packet there. And we did remove the mailbox detail to make sure that there was no inconsistencies with federal design criteria or whatever. We still try to make sure it's consistent with local requirements as far as location within the driveway or side property line, but we really don't review those. They're not a permit. So they didn't need to be in the details at this point. Other than that, the rest of the text is the underline is the addition, and the strike is what's being removed. And as was mentioned before, most of what's in table 10.10-2 is now in the pictorial form in the construction details and specifications. So this would be a request for a text amendment to the land development code.
We have seen this before. Anybody have any comments, questions on the details of this? Okay.
This is the first time I've got to see this, so please understand and please bear with me on
Sure.
this. As I go through all of this, I see a lot of information, detail as far as the road construction, but I see no detail on repairs of the road. Are we missing that, or is that someplace different than in here?
No, so it depends on what you mean. I mean, generally with a repair, you're talking about a resurfacing, which is generally an overlay. It's not a reconstruction. The importance of this is to make sure that if we do have roads that are in disrepair at some point, and you have to repair the entire road, that we have a guideline of how far to go. But usually, we don't go that far. We just do a patch Or a mill and replace.
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
I see no detail in here on patch repairs.
We generally would not provide a detail for a patch repair. I don't believe so. It wasn't recommended to do so.
After driving up and down this street for several years, every place I have seen that we've gone in and patched something, within a period of time, it becomes a road surface that is uncontrollable on various vehicles.
Right, so that's a good point of, there's only so many patches you can do before the evaluation of the entire road itself. What essentially happens is the subbase gets compromised after so many years, and then that's where the town has to, through evaluation and prioritization, have to make a decision whether to go in and actually replace and repair the entire road. So it's not really a detail for the patching. That's up to the Public Works Department, cold, hot patches, all that, whatever they want to use. We do have details and directions in here as how people repair and restore within the right-of-way when they do improvements. So a driveway improvement, if you're going to saw cut at the asphalt, how do you do that joint? That is in here. But for the town, as far as what happens is the evaluation will say the base is compromised, we need to repair the whole road, and then you fall back to these details of how to dig all that out and replace the subbase and the asphalt.
Where it's coming from is the fact that, as an example, when you go in to do a repair, and just using as a typical example, when you remove 1 cubic yard of underlaying to get to whatever it is you need to repair, you never put 1 cubic yard of fill back in there before you pave over it. And subsequently, the fill that you put in reduces in size and leaves us with a divot in a road. There's some way of preventing that.
I think that's we can speak with the Public Works Director about that. I mean, that's essentially a best management practices of how you go about doing the patch and the repair. These are really for new infrastructure and new capital projects, or replacement. Even on a resurfacing, you would have some plans drawn up for a resurfacing, but that's just boundaries of work and how thick your asphalt, really for the contractor to know what kind of layers they want. You do one layer, 2 layers. I don't want to get into the details of all that construction detail, but as a patch, you don't really need a detail. Now, if they're not being done and you're appropriately, that's, I think, a different conversation.
As far as telling us what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate.
That's up to the Public Works Department and their practices.
Can that be done by standards, or is that, I guess that's what he's asking, should they be done by standard, creating some sort of standard like this for repair? But you're saying that it's
I
up
haven't
to the-
seen them done as the details like this, because generally you're talking new construction, right? That's a repair in a
Well, that's
practice.
why I preferenced the question that, a lot of detail about new construction here, but there was nothing as far as repair of that.
Right, and because that's now, the construction standards are generally dealing with replacement or new infrastructure, right? So you've got new driveways, you've got new roadways, all that stuff. Patching is just is a maintenance operation that the Public Works does. And each patch is
And they
different.
live by their own standards,
They have their own
appropriate
techniques,
standards.
right?
yes.
And every Public Works Director is probably going to have a different approach to how to do that. What the town does do is evaluate those roadways during that process to look for deterioration of that subbase. And if it goes far enough, then they have to make the call of, is this the last patch we do? And we have to put this road on the list of replacement, which then they would follow.
That would
by
be
these
kept
details.
in the Public Works Department, some sort of guidelines on how to keep it, not necessarily need to be done at code level.
Right, so generally what you want to do is identify those things 3 to 5 years out and say, this really is the last time we could patch this hole. We got to put this on the CIP for road replacement, construction project, because it's expensive. It's a lot of road and interferes with the neighborhood. So it's more than just a resurfacing. But no, generally speaking, the patches or the whole maintenance is not part of your detail specifications.
What I was looking for is some way of, if we had some detail or some guidance for Public Works as far as how they attack the repair itself. And here again, whether it's the water department going in for something or sewage department going in for something that's under the roadway, anytime
Microphone.
Hey, Tim, can you talk in the mic?
Anytime they go in underneath the street, the amount of underlaying that they put back is never the same as what they take out. So therefore, it creates a subsidence of the roadway in that one spot. and we have to live with that for 3 or 4 or 5 years until we find enough patches that we go back and resurface the whole place.
Well, yes, but it's also not just about the resurfacing the whole place. It's about, once you get to that point, you got to question whether you need to redo the entire subbase.
I think at this point, though,
So-
these drawings here are for a definite. This is for when we're pulling up streets, when we're pulling up putting driveways in, when we're doing definite.
Or
When
if
it comes
somebody's
to
doing a new one,
repair,
yeah.
it's such an arbitrary item as to how to best to repair this, whether it's a cold patch or a hot patch, or how to do it, how much cubic feet came out and what pipe went in, that I don't necessarily know you could do it in a standard like this. What they're really trying to do is take away a lot of the gray areas and create a standard for our developers and our builders here on the island.
Right, so these are, the purpose of this is, think of almost new, I don't want to use the term new, but new,
Yeah.
or complete replacement versus standard practices or best management practices, which is a maintenance and operation function of Public Works.
How high the curb should
So-
be, sewer, drainage, things of that sort, not necessarily a repair patch of a street, because that is up to the discretion of the Public Works Department on how best to repair that.
Do have some unopened right-of-ways that are platted that have never been built, right? They're just grass at this point. So if somebody were to come in and petition to rebuild that for access to something, these are the standards that they would use for that.
I got more.
Okay, good. Keep-
If we
yeah.
have time, I got more. If you will, look at page, in the packet, page number 63. It gives you a picture of the stop sign and dimensions for it. It's going to be minimum or 3 feet in the ground, 7 to 8 foot max to the bottom of the sign. Everybody with me?
Yes?
Flip over the page to 64, and you have a typical street sign. Again, 3 feet minimum in the ground. The minimum is missing on the stop sign, but also the height definition is missing. How high is the street sign going to be? That dimension is missing.
I believe.
Madam
okay.
Chairman,
Yes.
this is a point of order here. I appreciate what Tim was saying, but that's our function, you know? Our role here today is to adopt an amendment to the Land Development Code that incorporates this by reference, but it is not the function of the local planning agency to review technical standards like this. And his points are all good and excellent, but they should be addressed to the people who drafted the standards.
But aren't we adding it by amendment, so wouldn't we have to review these? We are,
I think the point is, and we had this discussion last time, is there's a fine line between how specific you want to get into these details, since most of them are engineering standard details. For example, the sign height, there's a reference to P1-1. I mean, there's certain things that are details and specifications that are based on DOT best practices, right? Critiquing those versus the bigger picture, I think what Mr. Hughes is talking about, which is the code, making sure the code is reflective that these details are adopted, whatever they may be. Does that make sense?
so how best
how
for him?
I don't know.
He clearly has got some ideas as to things that are missing here that we've kind of,
Yeah, I think we can
so
take.
so
I think
should it be, he submits those to you?
I think we can take these comments and evaluate them and consider whether they are or not. I don't know the specific reason for the sign, for the street sign, other than I don't believe we set a street sign height. That's up to, again, the Public Works Department, whereas a stop sign has a standard that's recognized by the state of Florida what the recommended height is supposed to be. They don't necessarily tell you how to put your street signs up. So there's a difference there on that. But it doesn't mean we can't set one or a range. So I don't, my point is, I don't, how specific and detailed do you want? It sounds like there's some detailed aspects that he has questions, and we can take those notes, and I don't think it should change or hold up the text amendment. I think it's just a reference of whether we can go back and evaluate whether they need to be in there and take those under advisement.
I apologize if I'm overstepping, but I was just under the impression that if you want us to approve something, then I need to make sure it's correct before my approval. You know, if
And
I'm
that's what we're
mistaken on
talking
that,
about.
That's what I'm
is
talking
What part are we truly
We're not,
truly approving?
we're not approving the engineering standards. We're approving amendments to the land development code that incorporate them
Incorporates
by
these.
reference. We're not are we?
Correct.
Yes.
You're technically not approving the
We're not
amendments.
approving
However, I think some feedback is important. And
Well,
these are,
I think with the street signs, this is Scott Safford, some condos, some trailer mobile parks have lower signs. So I think if you set a minimum height, the street sign's gonna be above the buildings.
I mean, it went to me as far as when I got looking at all of this, I mean, when you even go over to page 66, the disabled parking, it gives you a minimum maximum height of the sign. And it was just a fact of, okay, if we're gonna give minimum maximum heights for signs for various things, then
Okay.
we should be just all the way through.
How about this, that we've duly noted that
So-
the signage height's missing there? Is there any other comments
just-
on it at this point
I have no
that you'd
more
like to
now.
add to get on record?
No, I'm done.
If I may,
Yes.
I think that Jason's comment is appropriate with respect to the three sections of the 3 pages that have been discussed. If you go back to the stop sign and you go to the ADA sign, those are established by state law. And there's a minimum and maximum height, and they're incorporated into this document. With respect to the street signs, there is no minimum or maximum established by state law, and that's why it's not there, in order to give Public Works and the town flexibility, depending upon the circumstances of how tall or short a street sign can or should be, given the specific circumstances. So, for example, if it's on the swale that's mounded and therefore it's higher, you don't need to have a minimum height or maximum height, because you take that into consideration for visibility purposes, I would suspect. But the point is taken, and as staff, we can mention that to the engineers that assisted in the preparation of this document, and get their feedback, and if necessary, make changes to it before it goes in first reading to the town council.
Again, I suggest that, and Tim has obviously spent a lot of time and looked at this, and he has some
point.
expertise in this, which I certainly do not have, or purport to have, and I'm not sure many of us on this committee do. But I would suggest that he, having done this himself, could make a list of this and submit it, as the attorney has said, to the Wexler Engineering that drafted this, for their
we'll
consideration.
welcome all those comments. I think
Yeah.
I can't answer the specific why a height wasn't set, other than it's probably not a normal practice for the street sign. It's not a traffic control device. But to your point, we can evaluate that and they can decide whether maybe we should.
I mean, the whole idea is if we're looking at this packet as approval for a standard, then let's adopt a standard. What is the standard? And that's all I was asking.
I understand. I think I would go back to what I think the point of this is a text amendment to make sure the text is consistent, so that we can, on a regular basis, update and adopt standards and change the standards. These will probably change annually or biannually, or twice every couple years.
Jason, how would you like, because he clearly went through these, he has some comments
Yeah,
and
I
some
want
suggestions.
all of his comments, and we
Okay.
can.
Do you want them on record, or you want them via?
It's up to you. I don't think we have to have them, but I
Doesn't
think
matter to me. However we can get it
I don't think we
Okay,
have to
how
have them.
about you submit
If
them
you
all
have
to-
anything specific, I would like them all, and if you have anything that's specific that has a conflict with what was in the packet of the standards with the text amendment, then that we need to get on record and clear that up. But the text amendment was tried to draft it in a manner that made it flexible for us to continue to adopt and update standards separately outside of the land development code. But if there's anything that's a conflict, I think that's what we need to talk about specifically. Otherwise, I'll take all your comments and we'll work on them.
So at this point, any comments on the text amendment pieces of this, which were those first 3 pages?
Yeah, and I would also point out that once this is incorporated by reference, any changes in engineering standards, they won't come to us. I mean, we don't have anything to say about these standards in the future. that's left to the engineering people. And, well, it's a separate document, totally separate document.
But I also am in agreement with Tim in some ways that, we have
Yes,
had a
well,
set of eyes on this.
and
Another
I-
set of eyes is not a problem.
And I appreciate what he's done and what he's saying, and I don't mean to, anyway.
And we want them. I mean, that's,
Okay.
it's helpful to us. We want the
Alright.
comments.
So he'll submit them via, at the end of this
I'll get
meeting,
with
what he
Jason.
has, give them to
Yeah.
Jason, if anybody else has any suggestions on that. All right, so is this truly a public hearing that we're taking public comment on, or? Okay, so any public comment on our amendment changes, if there's no more comments from us? Any public comment? Okay, do I hear a motion to adopt?
I would move that we approve the changes in the amendments to the Land Development Code as submitted by staff, which have the effect of incorporating by reference the engineering standard construction details.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. 6-0.
And for the public's reference, again, it goes back to, this will be a document that design professionals can hopefully utilize and save everybody time and money. Or applicants can utilize on their own, and just pull a detail and put it in their plans, and then we know it's consistent when this eventually gets adopted. So, thank you.
Welcome.
We're hoping it makes life a lot easier.
Next on the agenda is the Edison House CPD amendment. All right. So first we'll hear from Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Probst, Community Development. I did want to make mention that I handed out an Exhibit G that was referenced in the staff report, but was not attached. So I apologize for that. You should all have that attachment G now, or Exhibit G. Matthew Burton, agent for First Central Investment Corporation, is seeking to amend the schedule of uses with the master concept plan and CPD for Edison Beach House. The specific request is to allow parasailing as a use on the property. The Edison Beach House meets the locational standards to allow parasailing on the property. The original Edison Beach House CPD from 1997 did not include parasailing or other water sports as a permitted use, although the property did have that activity on it prior to the adoption of the CPD. In 2014, a request was denied to include resort accessory uses, including parasailing, personal watercraft, and chair rental in the list of permitted uses. This request is to allow parasailing activities only. This would include a booth on the EC zoned portion of the property and pickup of parasail customers. No additional parasailing licenses would be created by this decision. It would only allow existing parasail business to operate at Edison Beach House. The applicant is also here, and I'm available for any questions.
Anyone have any ex parte communication on this one?
Had a site visit and a discussion with Marlene and their maintenance person.
Site visit?
Any ex parte communication on this?
Oh, none.
Do we need to wait for Scott on this ex parte communication piece?
He can, you can move forward and for convenience sake, if you so desire. And then when he returns, he would have to disclose.
Okay, well, here he comes. Next up would be the applicant. Anyone here speaking for the applicant?
I don't think that they had a presentation plan,
Okay.
but they're available for any questions.
Scott, did you have any ex parte communication on this?
No.
Okay. All right. Any comments, questions for the applicant, for the city, for the town, sorry?
Could I ask for a little history lesson as to what happened in 2014 and why it was denied?
Do we know?
In 2014, there was a discussion regarding whether it was a resort because it was titled as resort accessory uses. My understanding from watching the meeting and reading through the minutes is that there was some concern that by calling these uses resort accessory uses, because they were requesting the parasailing, the personal watercraft, and the beach chair rental, that was somehow giving the Edison Beach House a resort title when it doesn't specifically fit into that category. That was my understanding of it. There may have been more to it in the background, but that was what I could get from the meeting.
I have some additional questions. Do you have a rendering of the booth that you're going to be putting out there, and also what the location of the booth is going to be?
State your name for the record.
Patrick Rinaldi, President Rinaldi Parasail Inc. And it's a 6 foot by 2.5 foot booth, very standard on the beach for basically the client would walk up, sign a waiver, and then go out to the parasail boat. So very little, no electricity, nothing anchored. It would move on and off the beach on a daily basis, and just behind the rack line where it would be accessible, but not in the thoroughfare for passersby.
What are the hours that traditionally it exists on the beach?
Normally from 9 to 5.
And then the weekends, 7 days a week?
Pretty much the same.
And do you have similar booths already situated on the island?
I do not personally. I have in the past, but they are standard all up and down the beach, and that is part of the ordinance that exists for parasail licenses.
Sarah, I thought I read here where it was First Central Investment Corp. Which was doing the application on this. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, Matthew Burton is their agent. He's filled out the affidavit.
Because here it says that they are the owner of Rinaldi Parasailing as well.
No.
At the bottom of this page that you just gave us. Am I reading this right? It says owner.
I think that's location. I think that they mean owner of that location.
It's owner of the
Because-
property, yes.
Yeah, because they have Grand Resorts and Persad for,
Okay.
those are the owners of the properties.
And contract, all right, now.
Remember, most of your property owners are not the vendors or licensed people that do this business. They usually lease it or allow them to be on their property.
I see this.
All Island Water
Now I
Sports
understand
leases
that.
from
Okay.
Beach Bar.
In regard to Mr. Adderholt's question, it is in our code, specifically the square footage and the size and what it can be for the booth.
Do you have any idea what your neighbors to the north, how they feel about this proposal?
Well, the closest neighbor to the north would be on the other side of the pier. Otherwise, the
to the
adjacent
north.
property.
North, not
To the
south.
north.
Oh, I'm
The other
sorry.
way.
Well, the documents have been sent out, the letter has been sent out to the surrounding area, and as far as I'm aware, there has not been any conflict as to what we have proposed.
You're not aware of any direct communication with your neighbors aside from the mail piece? In other words, there's not been any conversations?
No.
Has there been any issues with Rinaldi Parasailing at their other locations here?
Ma'am, we haven't had any complaints.
Am I able to add anything okay. Just a note as far as 2014 goes. At that time, there was no need for a location. All of the licenses that are outstanding were established in an existing location. Now, the situation has arisen that there is a license without a location. So that's, I mean, obviously, the landowner is making the request, but I am an agent to the landowner, so.
Yeah, this is Dan Hughes. That ordinance limits the number of licenses.
7.
Yeah,
And
and that's how the situation arose. You know, they can't just, they can only, there's only so many licenses that are permitted.
I guess my bigger question for the town, is this a way to go around our 7 licenses? That 7 licenses means 7 pickups on the beach, or is it 7 licenses and we can have 20 pickups on the beach? Because it's the same company that has the vendor's license.
I think it's the latter.
Hi, this is Ray Burns with Town of Fort Myers Beach, and since I do a lot of the permitting for all these things, I thought I might be able to help answer some of these questions. I don't think so, so we may need to do that.
Swear to tell the truth or affirm, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Nope. Okay, so we do allow for a certain amount of licenses. I don't have the code directly in front of me at this time. Sarah, if I could steal the copy printout that you
I
have.
believe it was 7
There's
from.
7.
Yes. However, in looking more into the code, there is a section for parasail. Surprisingly enough.
Distance between,
500 feet
I'm sorry, I'm
distance.
trying
Yeah.
to find this section.
it's the distance, it controls that concern.
Yes, you are only allowed to be within, I think it's 250, but I'm trying to
500
find
feet.
it.
500 feet.
500, thank you. Between each parasail location site to avoid any accidents and collisions with jet skis and parasailing and that whole deal.
That's on the beach. I mean, when they're out there in the water, it's a whole different ballgame than 750.
Yes.
But, okay.
I just make a point of clarification. I want to distinguish between the wave runners and the parasailing. Those two always seem to get bunched together, and this request has nothing to do with wave runners whatsoever. I might also add that to the west of the pier, there are no parasail licenses up until the pink shell. And on the east side of the pier, there were 6 up to Junkanoo, and there are still 5.
If you could just help me, maybe you answered the chair's question, but could you try that one more time? So we permit 7 vendors, but you could have unlimited number of booths?
That's the section I'm trying to find. Like, I'm trying to find the exact verbiage to answer that question, and for some reason, I'm just
Because
having
this is
trouble
not
locating
issuing a permit to have an actual parasailing business there, just a pickup. Because all 7 licenses are already out. Am I correct? And you already have 1.
Yes, but that license doesn't have a home.
Correct. You can hold on to your license and retain it without having a site just to hold on to your license, as long as you renew within the timely manner within the allowed date. And I think the cutoff date's October. Yes, it's October 15th. So as long as you apply within that time, you still retain your rights to have that license, which then can be moved to an allowable location elsewhere later.
So if I'm reading this chart correctly, then if we were to approve this, then no one else is coming in front of us asking us for a pickup and drop-off, because all 7 locations and all 7 licenses have a home. Am I correct?
Can we, Jason,
more-
I know, to your question, I want to jump in a little bit, I don't want to confuse it, but we're talking about zoning issues and the use that's going to be allowed on the site or at the site. And then the licensing is kind of a second or separate component from that. You're not issuing or you're not approving the licensing, obviously. You're approving the zoning.
Get
the
that.
addition, right, so that's important because I think essentially the property could do this on their own. Most properties don't want to do it on their own. They need a vendor. And so you need to get sites that qualify, and then you need to be able to have a vendor to then be able to apply for it and meet all the criteria. So it's adding the use, And then the second part to that was, does it,
Well,
can
what
the
I'm
vendor?
more concerned about is that we're adding more locations to the same license, but it is one license, one location.
Correct.
Is the clarification. So we're not going to see another zoning change issue come with XYZ Resort, where we're going to see Mr. Rinaldi show back up going, yeah, I just need a pickup, but I still own, I'm using this license up here.
Oh,
Are you following me?
Yeah, but you may see applications to amend a CPD or an RPD or whatever to add that use if they want to take it on, because it's not a licensing issue. Licensing is a vending issue, right? It's the business activity. If you want to do it as a use to your property and you qualify, you can do that. So I can't guarantee, no, someone's not going to ask for the use, but they won't be issued a license. Nobody will be issued a vending license at that location because they're taken up.
7
Does that make-
parasailers, 7 done, it doesn't, okay.
Right, but you could
I'm
still
following it.
see more parasailing and more of that being done by the property owner in the future. But that, again, that's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I-
Okay. Okay, the number of locations is controlled by the zoning.
Yes.
The number of licenses set forth in the code. So we have up to 7 licensees, but if people continue to come in front of this committee and get granted the use, there will be more than 7 locations. Okay, that's how it works.
So that clarifies it too, so yes.
One additional clarification, assuming you stay within the 500 feet challenge, correct?
There's,
So there would be an ultimate limit based on the 500 feet restriction for the islands?
That's correct, based on the code limitation between that, but clearly, if you picture it in your mind's eye, you could see that there, with more than 500 feet, there's potential for more than 7 locations.
I got you, thank you.
Essentially, every 500 feet could have a parasailing if they come in for a zoning change, is what they're saying.
But if I may, that's a function of economics as well, because you start adding additional, same vendor, under license, you're now talking about multiple vessels, do the economics support? And we don't necessarily need to get into that, but that's going to be, the marketplace is going to be a determining factor, additional locations. And I think that one of the issues, if I may, that as it relates to the use, and that is what we're here for, is how it's described in the application, parasailing booth and pickup. And the perception is that they're picking up from this location. So actually, this is where the activity is going to take place, and that's the reason why they need the zoning change in order to be able to allow the use at this particular location.
Anything?
No, I have no problem with this situation. It brings back a lot of memories for me. I was on the LPA when we first approved this, and I was on the town council when we approved Exhibit C, and I'm looking at the date on that, March 13th, 2000, signed by John Mulholland, and tragically he died a few days after signing this. And that's when I became the mayor. Little history there. But and Mr. Vax took me through the property when it was first being built. And it's a fine amenity to the town, in my view. And I see no problem with this, and I would move to approve it.
Other comments from us? Any questions?
One, in doing the site inspection, I talked with their maintenance gentleman, and he kind of indicated that they would be leaving this booth out on the beach most of the time, and you made a statement that you're going to be removing it every night. I just need a clarification as to which one is correct.
I can help you with that.
Please do.
So the booths have to be moved at night. This is due to sea turtle reasons. Like, you cannot be leaving a booth out in the middle of the night for a turtle to get stuck under, because they can't back up. So once they get stuck under something, they are stuck. So that being the case, we have in our code that they have to be moved to a storage area that's drawn out in their application for the permit use, where things will be stored at night. So yeah, cannot be left in one spot on the beach all night.
We'll make one comment. I wish we knew why it was not approved in 14 when it came through. A little bit more detail on why this came in front and then it wasn't approved then too. And here we are 5 years later going down the same path and wondering.
One of the counselors who just was now re-elected to the council commented that compromises had been made for Edison House in the past and they needed to draw the line. I saw that in the minutes, but that doesn't give us a lot of detail.
Doesn't
Yeah.
tell us why the line is drawn or anything of that sort.
The only thing that I can decipher from that particular request was that it was for chairs, umbrellas, wave runners, and the parasailing rights. And once again, whenever those items are all balled together, I think it's a completely different animal.
Okay. Any public comment on this?
Chair, Board, Leon Moyer. I have a question regarding the Parks and Rec Ordinance 97-05. Trying to load it, and this morning your Wi-Fi here is terrible. I can't even load your agenda after sitting here half an hour. So I can't load that ordinance, but that ordinance, to my memory, says that you cannot bring motorized vessels with propellers into designated swimming areas because of the safety issue of the propeller hitting somebody who's swimming. And yet I see this happening all the time along the beach. Some areas more flagrant violations, I believe. But it is a safety issue, and the parasailers often bring their sailboats, or not sailboats, motorboats, right into the shore to load a passenger and then take them out and go parasailing. Is this a concern?
That's permitted. That's permitted under that ordinance that you're referring to. They have to come in and they're at a right angles from the 500 feet that we established years ago to prevent boats within 500 feet. And that's why we have those little buoys out there.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
those little white buoys, that's an ordinance that was adopted when I was in office. But the parasailers are permitted to come in at right angles to that and within parameters.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes, you are an attorney and correct with the law there. However, I challenge you to find those buoys up at Pink Shell and at other places. They're coming in anywhere they feel like to pick up these passengers. That's my only point. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this? All right. Public comments closed. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I would move approval of case number DC 1-201900002 to permit parasailing at the location of 830 Estero Boulevard in accordance with the staff report and incorporate the findings and conclusions set forth on page 115 and 100 through 117 of the packet. Technically, it's an amendment to the schedule of uses on that property.
I hear a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Passes 6-0. Excuse us while we go through our paperwork here. Let me find my agenda again. Next up on the agenda is the public hearing. Oh, I lost my agenda in this paper here. Thank you. It's a public hearing on the variance for 215 Primo Drive, variance to rear water and side yard setback.
Sure. Good morning, Jason Green, Community Development. The applicant is seeking a variance to a couple different variances, mostly related to a deck that's wrapped around the back of the property, but also is just part of a cleanup to the existing single-family structure that's there also. We run into this issue on occasion where repair or replacement comes into question when it's non-conforming, how much can they do? The deck in the back requires structural repair in order to maintain it, and so since it is in violation of the existing setbacks, they require a variance to kind of put that, in place and validate that. So that's what's before you. The house is already there. We included that just as a part of for future reference if they do have to do some repair and major repair. However, we have included some recommended conditions that if it's a substantial improvement or substantial damage, then obviously that variance would not apply because that gives the opportunity to relocate the house if they have to tear down and replace. So based on the existing conditions, we recommend approval because the deck is there, just requires structural replacement or structural repair to maintain it. The roof is there. I looked back at it as far back as I could with aerials and existing conditions, and all of it's been there. The one thing that they will change is there's a set of stairs on the back that'll be removed to allow an additional setback from that. And then what they'll do is they'll provide a spiral staircase underneath the deck so that there's no longer the 4 to 6 feet of stairs protruding out into the rear yard. So that'll essentially by default increase that setback from the seawall and from the property line. So if you have any questions or comments, or you want to go through it, on page 189 of your packet is a survey, and that shows the existing conditions of the deck off of the rear. And so if approved, then they will be able to continue forward with permits for replacement of the stairs and the structural repair to the deck, which is under roof currently.
Any ex parte communication?
Had a site visit, but nobody was home.
Site visit.
None.
Anyone here from the applicant? To speak, please state your name.
Mark Keene, president of Orinoco Enterprise. I bought the house 4 years ago, and it has a wraparound deck on it. It's been there for over 30 years, and the side facing Tracy Gore's house was rotten, and the day that the lady was moving out of the house, fell down the rotten stairs and died 2 weeks later. So I immediately came down, tore that section off so nobody else could go up those stairs, and I replaced it with a temporary so you could get into the side door. The other section is to the front of the canal. It's been there for the same amount of time. We went back, I had contractors go into the archives to find it, and it shows a little portion of that deck since the 60s with the lid on it. And all I want to do is straighten it up so I don't have the same issues, or any of you people coming to visit, if you were there, the front deck is obviously swaying, and I just want to get some new 8x8s put underneath it. It's all designed from the engineer, and that's what I'm here for, is just to straighten out a mess that needs to be taken care of before something else happens.
Any comments, questions from our committee? Dan, any?
So in the packet, it said repair work was done without a permit. Is that?
That is correct on the one side. I called the engineer, asked him how it should be placed, and he told me exactly how to do it. Because I sent the crew down here, I immediately tore it off, and I put that section on. And it is done the way the engineer wanted it, with the footings, 8x8s, and it's only supporting a 6-foot deck. It's nothing to do.
Is that the deck or the
That's
stairs?
just the side deck stairs.
Okay.
Correct.
Where the lady fell through?
Where the lady fell off, yes. That was replaced immediately because now I have the liability and I didn't want anything to happen, and I fixed the deal, but I called the engineer and he told me exactly how to do it, and we did it to those specs, and it's maybe 10 feet long. And that's going to come around and eventually wrap to the front of the house where it always has been. We're dealing with the canal side.
neighbors are comfortable with these changes as best as you can tell?
They would love to get it fixed. I have no issues with that, and I've talked to all of them, and I see nobody here. No.
The existing size of the platform at the side stairs,
We're keeping that.
you're keeping that?
We're
and-
keeping that, and there is a 4 to 5 foot step going down the front. I am removing all that because that is shot, and what we're gonna do is put a spiral staircase closer to the house. So it's gonna come up under the deck instead of using the 5 foot out here. We're gonna eliminate the staircase going down, so that gains you more room to the setback.
You're not really increasing any size?
I am not
of the
increasing
deck.
nothing, we're shortening it.
Okay,
Yes, I'm not going after any more ground.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning. I just want to tell the planning board that we have a situation where we have a lot of non-compliant things that have been allowed over time. And we have to be clear with whether things are grandfathered in, meaning you have a perpetual right to do that forever, or when you come in for a building permit to repair or replace, that we relook at that nonconformity and determine whether or not it could be improved upon to bring it more into compliance. In this particular case, while we can't cure the entire issue, we're able to cure part of it by relocating the stairs to a circular staircase. So that's the purpose of this meeting. The fact that it's been there for years in and of itself does not make it compliant. What makes it compliant is you all agreeing to that today and allowing this nonconformity. And if 10 or 20 years from now, he or some subsequent owner of this property comes in to do major work on this deck, they should come back before whoever is a planning board at that particular time and see if there's a way for them to reduce their nonconformity, or the board is comfortable with it continuing. So that's why you're seeing this case here today. The building permit part will get resolved through the building permit process. But it's our goal from a staff perspective, when we encounter these things, that if it's not clearly a grandfathered condition, that it comes back before this board, so this board and the public has a way to see if the nonconformity could be further mitigated.
Do you feel that you have mitigated this nonconformity as much as possible?
Well, it's my understanding, not short of totally tearing down and redesigning the structure, the encroachment into the setback has been reduced by changing the nature of the staircase to a spiral staircase. So I would say that the owner has made a good faith effort to do that. None of the neighbors are here objecting to that. So although I don't get a vote, I would say that the gentleman is doing what he can, notwithstanding he does have to correct the building permit process. In terms of the zoning aspect of it, he's doing what he can to reduce the impact to the neighborhood of the encroachment.
'Cause it does look here that there is some other nonconformities on this property too, as well.
There are, and
including quite a
those
few.
would come to play when when a building permit gets pulled for those things for repair or replacement.
The house isn't even 15 feet from the canal.
And I think Jason alluded to that in his comments, that, if the house required substantial improvement or had substantial damage, that would get revisited at that point before a building permit would be issued to build in place.
I would agree to that. If a hurricane knocks that thing down, you could move it to the 25-foot back because I have plenty of room in the front. But at this point, it's a perfectly good structured house, and I just remodel on the exterior, put new hurricane windows in it, and want to add the deck and stuff. Put a new roof on after the hurricane came. I lost my roof, so I put a steel roof on that, got the permit for that. We just want to carry on and get it finished up for the neighbors so it looks good in the neighborhood. And I've been on this beach for 30 years. I've lived down in Island Shores next to the Pink Shell. And then this place came up for sale. A friend of mine was getting divorced, and then that didn't have to happen. She fell down the stairs, so that's how I purchased this place. I just want to clean it up and make it look good for the city.
Is there any benefit to having him provide the surveys ahead of, because you ask, as
He
part of
has
his
it.
conditions, he's already done these
Right,
surveys that
so-
you requested?
Packet page 189 is essentially, I guess what I'll call is an as-built survey. It depicts where the perimeter, the edge of the deck is, and it's got measurements and setbacks. And so we're referring to that survey as kind of, as his site plan, right? It's, because it's there. And that's where we're talking about, but it can't change. I allowed some flexibility in the proposed condition of 0.1 feet, just in case the surveyor measurement was off a fraction rounding. But otherwise, that's essentially what they're allowed to do. Because we have to be very specific on the setbacks. And secondly, you have really three variances that's part of this. You have the deck that's at the, that is essentially the serving as a platform at the top of the stairs for access to the house. That's one, because of a side yard. The second is the rear yard portion of the deck to the rear property into the water. And then the third is the house. So you can take those all up, or you can break them up.
From this, you're pretty confident that he is not in compliance with our impervious surface issue and our drainage issue? Because it does state in here,
Yes.
you'd have to provide a
Those are
survey
some
for
things
that.
that we can address through the building permitting and the site stuff. There's been some pavers and stuff that are, you can do some pavers. It's just eyeballing it on the site. We just want to make sure that he's in compliance with the 67%.
And I put all the drain pipe and stuff in that they required. The engineer had pavers all drawn up. We put the gullies in, put 12-inch pipe from the center to a holding area, down the center and under the two driveways. I got all that done.
Okay.
I have a question. What, in the background, it says was requested due to code enforcement action. What precipitated that?
I believe it was the stairs that started the process.
But it was started without a permit.
Yes, correct.
I commend our code enforcement for bringing it to our attention. The gentleman's done a lot of work on this home, but I think that it seems like he only came to the town until he was found violating the working without a permit. So-
Sir, that is wrong. I've been after a permit for over 3 years. They could not make up their mind on this issue. And I believe it was Tara. I went through her, I went through Matt, and nobody to this day except Jason told me to come in and get a variance. I could have had this done 2 years ago if they would have just said, you need a variance to leave this. Not one word was brought up, except when Jason came on board and the mayor came over to me and says, get a hold of Jason, we're going to get this done. And here's where we are today.
I'll also use it as a public service announcement. Mr. Hughes' point is that stairs are an important part. There are safety issues, and so we do encourage people to come in and get permits for the stairs, get the engineering done. Don't just, what happens, Mr. Hughes, is that you probably know somebody replaces a board, and then it turns into, oh, it's rotted underneath, I'll just replace that next board, and that's where we're drawing the line, is the structural. You have to come in and get permits for. And then if the structural is in violation of the setback, then you have to get a variance for that setback.
I had another discussion for member moments, but that particular situation right there has been brought to, I think, most of our attentions of lately. Is I've been replacing 1 or 2 boards, and now I've got a code issue.
Because it's never 1 or 2 boards, unfortunately.
Okay. But it has, I mean, it feels like that one in particular has come to our attention. People like at least a couple people have brought it up. So
Yeah,
you've been
just
on
as
this-
a lighter moment, Madam
Yes.
Chair, we also had the people who replaced 1 and 2 boards and wound up replacing their shower and bathtub too. But I think as logical people, you could understand that if you put your deck in, and therefore all the boards are approximately the same age, and the stringers and the footers and all that are approximately the same age. So therefore, if the boards are starting to fail, there's a good chance that the other elements of the stairs are starting to fail as well.
I would like to say something on that. I did come with the reconstruction of the upper deck just to replace the old stuff, and Tara said, You cannot do that. You have to leave that stand. And that is absolutely crazy, because when you do have rotten out boards, you do want to replace them with new boards. And then she told me it was constructing a new deck, not repairing an old deck. So that's the issue I've been fighting for over 2 years. And finally, I hope we can get it to an end today. Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Questions for the town or for our applicant? Okay, any public comment on this? Okay, we'll close public comment. Anyone like to propose a motion? All right, I would like to motion that we approve variance 201800028, the 215 Primo Drive, variance to rear water and side yard setbacks for single-family residence with an elevated deck. Conditions, the findings and conditions from the town, and the conditions for approval on page 187.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Oh, excuse me.
Aye.
For purpose of the record, I want to make sure that the motion is to approve the 3 variances that are being requested.
It only comes under one variance number for us here.
It's one application, but it contains three variances. The structure rear setback, the
The deck rear setback.
setback, and then the side.
Side yard deck setback, and the house rear setback.
I just, so the record's clear that you're approving, that you under.
We're
that
approving
everything-
all 3.
Yeah, they're approving all 3. Thank you, sorry.
Still second?
Still second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. And that closes our public hearing portion of this. Next, we'll open up our administrative agenda. Ms. Lori Wolf has to leave for another engagement. So on the administrative agenda, first is scope of work for the parking lot study contract.
So we just want to give you an opportunity before it goes to council and the work gets started, obviously. If there's anything in here that you have any comments on, please provide them. It was just an opportunity for you to look at it and also be updated on what we're doing. It's been something we've been trying to work towards for a year and kind of whittle down the scope. There's obviously multiple parking discussions, different topics. This one is more related to how parking is used and heavier times, lighter times, what do we have available, that sort of thing. So if you have any comments, please feel free to give them to me, or you can afterwards, however you want, but it'll be before council next week.
The
With your-
16,000 flat fee, no surprises other than their expenses. Do we have a cap on daily, weekly, monthly expenses on this?
Well, there's, basically the 16,000 is the cap of the cost, so.
Plus expenses, if I read right.
Which they can't go over 25, let me put it that way. The town manager can't sign over 25.
Okay,
Madam Chairman?
yes.
I commend the town for instituting this study. I think it's a very important issue in the town, and hopefully we'll learn a lot from it. You put your finger on one thing I was concerned about in the payment for services. It's a little vague and subject, other expenses not subject to approval, but we have a competent attorney here, and he's going to review the contract. I don't want to second guess that, but I do have a question, and that is that's my understanding that this is a proposal, and it also includes the fee schedule, and unlike our experience in Illinois, in Florida, you determine who the consultant was going to be, and then you negotiated a fee. And there are exceptions, I understand, to that. And is this the only proposal that's been obtained? And if so, is it okay, that's the council, that they submit a proposal and the fee in one document?
Well, so this basically, to use the term piggyback contract, these people are experts in this field and they have multiple contracts open with numerous jurisdictions across the state. And it's actually a piggyback. I believe the city of Clearwater, they provided this services. They've been selected under the CCNA rules for that, and it permits us to basically just use them. And actually, the guy that leads the study lives in Naples and is nearby and very familiar with Fort Myers Beach. And I believe that actually several years ago they were going to do work for the town, and something happened with that. So we feel they're well qualified and been recognized as experts in this field across the state. So
I don't question that, Jason.
Sure. But
They're
no, this
well
is the only one.
qualified.
Right.
Yeah.
This was used as a piggyback because they are an expert in that field and they've been
Well, for
qualified.
example, on the audit for the town, when they submit, when we receive proposals from consultants, it has no reference to what their fee's going to be. We choose who the consultant's going to be, and then a fee is negotiated at a separate issue.
That's partly because that's specific under architecture, engineering, landscaping, and
Well,
surveying services.
that's my question. Does this fall within one of those exceptions?
No.
And let me, what staff is saying is that the initial selection of this particular consultant by the city of Clearwater, which we are piggybacking off their agreement, was in compliance with the CCNA, which is short for Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act. So the firm was selected by the city of Clearwater based upon its qualifications and its ability to do the work. We have piggybacked off that contract and are now tasking them with the specific negotiate, and we did negotiate the price for the work that they are going to perform.
That confused me, that being piggybacked on that contract. Is that contract?
Our purchasing policies and procedures have exemptions to otherwise having to put out to bid or other types of, one of the exemptions is if there's an existing competitively bid agreement between the entity in question and another governmental agency. And in this particular instance, this company, Walker, has an agreement that was competitively procured pursuant to state law with the city of Clearwater. So we are taking advantage of that existing agreement and negotiating a price for this particular project here in Fort Myers Beach.
Well, is the agreement with the city of Clearwater, are we subject to the terms of that agreement?
Yes.
So what if they're inconsistent with what we have here?
Agreement would prevail, and it's, as you indicated, I have already made a note because it's already on I was reviewing the document to inquire about the underlying contract to see if there were any issues, and we will review that and make sure that the town is properly protected before it gets placed on the agenda for approval by the town council.
That was my concern. I just didn't quite understand what the tie-in there was. Thank you.
And just to that note, it's within the budget that was set by
Yeah.
the town council for this task and this project.
Is there a consultant company that can consult on the number of bathrooms on an island? I'm not joking.
No, there's
Not
a
touching
state
that.
law. There's for certain type of facilities, there's a minimum number of bathrooms, bathroom stalls that have to be provided, and it became a very significant issue when it's certain it became a gender issue.
Right.
That some places were some patrons were complaining that there were unequal number of bathrooms based upon gender, and so the state adopted a statute saying that it had to be gender neutral, and you had to provide the same number for men and women. And now there's a requirement that there be family restrooms as well, but it really applies to new facilities.
So let me ask you a question. Can a town enforce, if we grant parking privileges, can we tie the number, adding porta potties during season to that permit?
Those requirements as they relate to us are based upon the Florida Building Code, government buildings versus private buildings. As long as they meet the requirements of whatever it is that they were permitted for, the number of bathrooms, or if it's as we've discussed before, legal non-conforming, the town really doesn't have that much of an ability to require them unless they need to come in for some type of approval from the town. But then the law is that you have to tie the conditions have to be related to what it is that you're approving.
Well, where he's coming from, because this has been brought up multiple times, is that we've got lots of parking businesses. It's a business here on the island, and it's a high revenue, low cost business. And in many cases, that's the only dollar that particular family might spend on this island. But then when they have to go use the restroom, they'll go into like his hotel and their restaurants and stuff like that. They slip and fall, they sue the hoteler, or they sue the restaurant, but yet they've never spent a dime in that business. And so the thought was, at some point, maybe looking at our code and going with these parking businesses, at least during season where there's a high concentration of people, requiring a comfort station be on premise during season to accommodate for this, because it is a business that's taking all the money but pushing the liability off on other businesses downtown. So that's what this conversation was, everyone's talking about, is can we at some point in time, and maybe it is part of the studies we're looking at parking, is that we don't have enough public restrooms to accommodate the public.
So I'll jump in
So
and
how
just
would
say,
we handle that?
I think that is outside of the scope of what this scope is, but I think it's great feedback in that, remember at the beginning I said there's multiple issues related to parking, which is part of the reason why it's taken time to get to this point, is trying to sort that out. Those being, what do we do and how do we permit parking lots, and what are their requirements to get approved for a parking lot? I think that's a land development code, zoning issue, thing that is somewhat tied to this. This is really more of the loading, which ones are, what type of parking is being used, commercial versus public, seeing whether businesses are doing more parking than we're even realizing. I think those things will set kind of where the busy part is. What's a lot of study, I've looked at a lot of studies that they've done, and a lot of studies end up coming out. You have plenty of parking, just nobody can find it, right? That's sometimes a response.
You can look at signage as well.
Signage. I mean, those, they may come, that may be an observation that they come up with. Like you have plenty of number of spaces. I saw this in their Flagler Beach study. Basically, Flagler Beach had 45% of the parking available. It's just nobody could find it. Now they're a very municipal heavy parking town. We're not as heavy on that side, other than on street parking. We don't have a lot of public lots. It's more of a private lot thing. But I think to your point is, after that is done, I think the next step of that is how does that relate to the other conversation about what do we do with parking moving forward? So we've had the design criteria that we've talked about with landscaping, and whether they got bigger landscape buffers or smaller landscape buffers. That was part of it also. I think the next part to that will be what do we do about accessibility and other things that they need to be providing.
This is no less than the fourth or fifth time that this specific subject has come up, so maybe it might need to get on the agenda faster.
But that's my point is, there's 3 or 4 different sections of parking that we're talking about. And every time I talk to somebody, it's a different issue that is their number one priority, right? So we've talked about some of the design criteria of parking lots. We should talk about use related and what do you do with that property before and after, if you want a parking lot, commercial parking lot. And then this is really more of the busyness and the usability of parking on the island. They'll provide observations like that, like your spaces are generally being filled up first thing in the morning. They're staying all day. They're not staying all day. The heavy times are at this part of the island, that part of the island. We're finding a substantial number of spaces available, but nobody knows where they are. Those are the types of things that should come out of this. They'll help drive that next part of that conversation. Because where do you put those? Who do you require to do that? If it's an area that nobody's parking in, then why do that? So
We also look at, you should have all-day parking in one location and in and out parking in another, or
that'll be part of the observations and suggestions that come out of that. We may see heavy turnover in all of it. We may see areas that are, like you said, becoming all day, or maybe that's a burden just because there's an all day and it's not being used for the downtown district, right? The thought of the downtown district is park once, go to the beach and use the businesses. is that the functionality of that parking down there?
I think that's a big issue. Is when people park all day in front of a store, that store's not then able to generate more traffic in and out.
But we're also seeing that they're betting on they're going to have higher turnover and gain more revenue from renting that space than they are in their store, which is, I think, unfortunate. That's not really what,
Could think of
but
a
again,
map
all
that
those
does that.
pieces are kind of separate issues that are related, and we've got to do this data collection first, I think, to start the conversation on the rest of those. And we've already had the design conversation with landscaping.
Context of the comment, now that, I understand what it is, that certainly is, I would echo Jason's comment. It is something that, as we move forward, it needs to be included in the conversation and the recommendations to ultimately develop or modify the existing regulations.
Good, thank you.
Any other comments on this parking contract?
Anything in the scope?
Jason?
Yes, sir.
This study that's being done, who's the recipient of the study? The
Town
council?
council is yes, they will receive this,
So-
well, staff, and then report it to the town council.
So any recommendations is really coming from this company?
Correct.
As you mentioned, there's a lot of different facets of the parking monopoly, if you will. At some point in time down the road, we as the LPA will have possibly some recommendations we'll have to consider and changes we'll have to make at some various point in time, which could also include what was just discussed here about the facilities.
Absolutely, yes. I think there'll
Okay,
there'll be general recommendations related to parking, right? The use of parking, how operation functions on the island, in general, as a commercial operation. From that, it'll be up to obviously the council to instruct us to implement whatever comes out of that. And some of those I can foresee turning into separate ordinances, could turn into land development code changes, could turn into other components that we've been discussing. They could, yes.
In other words, this study is basically just the first step of a stepping stone of hopefully getting to where we want to be down the road.
My hope is yes, it'll generate the data that helps us make decisions in multiple different areas related to parking.
How long is the study going to take? Is there a?
Oh, we're March, so the data collection
30 days.
in theory is going to occur before the end of the first week of April, all of it. So we've got 3 weeks essentially to collect data. The report will take a little bit of time after that. So I would assume May, but we need to get basically we're trying to get them started next week.
Right.
I'm
Because they got to
good.
physically come down here, put people out, they stand out there, they count, they measure, they look at, what type of parking do we have? They do all that data collection, so.
Good, good. Okay. Appreciate the input. Thank you. Just one quick question to the chair of the HSA. Do you have anything for us today? Do we need to?
Oh, yeah, real quick.
All right, then we gotta, let's recess as the LPA. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're convened as a Historic Preservation Board.
Okay, I'll make this quick. We're actually moving forward. Susan Dozniak and Joanne Champ have been a great help. We've actually combined just about every different list in the town into one master list. These are all the homes that could qualify for historic recognition or importance. What we've done from there is we've parted down to a top 50 quote-unquote hit list of homes that have some real importance on the island. So Lori and Betty Simpson actually attended the Women's Club meeting last week and did a presentation on what we're trying to achieve, and that's get more homes recognized. And that went over really well, so we're going to try to have another meeting at the next Historical Foundation meeting at the library in April. And we're going to send a mailer out. We're going to try to send a mailer out next week to these 50 homes and try to get those people to attend. Okay. So we're also going to do some social media, and things are moving forward.
Were those two documents part of public record from your meeting?
Are they public record, Jason? They
Yes.
certainly can be.
At the meeting, yes, they're part of the.
From that
yeah.
meeting, okay.
We
that's
just want to
fine.
make sure anything that's produced or brought to it and incorporated we have copies of that.
All right.
And when you let me know those meeting dates, we can help with the town's Facebook page. And we also do a top 10 list, I think, of things that are going on. We can include those dates.
Fantastic. And I understand we're going to have some media coverage as well. Is that correct? All right, that's awesome. That's all I have.
And you still have 2 openings, or?
And we still have 2 openings, and they were posted. I believe Katie if it's not filled, she's going to apply right after season's over.
I have another name for you. I was talking to Beth Ann Tullis, was saying how she was interested in the historic vibe of the island, and I told her about your opening.
Great.
So,
Have her apply. That's great. That's all I have, so I'd like to adjourn as the
second it?
HPB.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we are reconvened as a local planning agency. Now up on our agenda is the LPA member items. Tim? Jim?
Wanted to briefly thank Jason for the education training seminar all day last week. It was very helpful. Appreciate your efforts on that. Nothing more?
I know it's a long day. So.
Oh, it was dry,
It was riveting.
Riveting, thank you.
but needed.
The email address straightened out?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that. It was very informative. Even though it was a long drive up there in the middle of the season, it was worth it for me. And I have one other question. What are these?
Under my
Oh,
agenda.
Okay. All right.
Well, I also attended the seminar and had the same reaction as Scott and Jim, and it was very helpful, and appreciate the town sending us to that. I do have something else I'd like to comment on, and that is on the minutes of the joint meeting of the local planning agency and the town. They're very lengthy, and there's a lot said in here. But if the purpose of these minutes is to have somebody that's wasn't involved to read them, it'd be, meaningless, to tell you the truth, because it's the issues that, it runs together a lot of comments by people, and it wouldn't educate anybody to read it without knowing what was going on. And and even I, in
Somewhat
reading,
circular in nature,
yeah,
too.
even I,
Yeah.
in reading it, it became obscure, and except in several places where it pointed out that we did reach a consensus on 3 or 4 things. But the point I'm making is, or I should ask, does the person who prepares this, and I don't mean to be critical of that, because they're just putting everything they hear, but if the purpose of minutes is to educate people on what happened at that meeting, this wouldn't do that. I think we could all agree that when you read this, you don't come out of there with a clear understanding of what was accomplished. And I wonder if the person, they do this from a tape?
I believe so, yes.
Perhaps if they could be present at the meeting, it would, and could see who said what and relate the comments, so they weren't so disjointed, that there might be a better way to approach this. I don't know whether there's a significant cost involved in that, but simply what I'm saying is, I don't know what these minutes accomplish if they're to let people know, exactly what took place at that meeting.
I think it's a valid point, but I don't know that the intent of minutes are to do that. I think that's, and especially, you say circular, that conversation was circular, right? There was.
Oh, yeah.
With no disrespect to anybody, self-included.
Oh, it was.
The context of the conversation is always difficult to put into.
I understand.
Right? So we always tell people to watch the video. That's the first thing. But I think, to your point, there is a follow-up to be done of direction or things that have, a bullet point list to then we can produce to the public of this is kind of what the summary was. And I think it's a job of staff and all of us to make sure we get that out.
I can add something. I think we need more of those meetings, especially with the new council coming in. I think that was very productive, and I was amazed at how much we agree on.
When you're in the same room and you have to, yeah.
Eventually, as a new member, there was a lot of history that was very, very helpful. I thought it was a very productive meeting as well. Yeah.
I think we will work to get that done at least quarterly, because I do think it benefits us. Plus, we have all those items that we are trying to, all those gray areas we're trying to come to consensus on so that we can clean up some of that. And I believe that, we'll have more of those.
Well,
I
frankly,
think
when
if
you're
we can get a meeting before,
when
you
you're
know, the July
rewriting code,
recess.
yeah, when you're rewriting code, it helps get everybody in the same room. So, to your point, Mr. Hughes, I think we can do a next step as a summary of that. It's kind of a direction, go-to-do list, which we then need to show to the public. That's really I don't know if there's another way to do it. Because even if you go back and you have someone do what you're talking about, I still don't think there's going to be context to it.
I don't have a good answer to that. My only suggestion was that perhaps if the person taking the minutes were present, they could recognize the coherency of a particular subject that was being discussed, rather than people are talking and jumping around and,
And I'll write it down, because I think it's a valid point about our conversation the next time we have one. Is there a different way we want to go about than the standard minutes that get produced from that? And we can prepare for that ahead of time, I think. Obviously, between town manager and town council, we'll have that discussion.
I only want to say something on the election. I look forward to working with Rexanne and Ray as the LPA. I'm sure all looking forward to it too as well. And congratulations, and we thank Boback and Gore for their service. That's all I have. Moving along to our attorney. Nothing?
Nothing.
Nothing? All right.
Enough.
Man of few words.
How's traffic?
Jason, and these
So in
wonderful
front of
documents
you,
give us.
I'm hoping Chelsea hears my voice and comes in. In front of you, there's I think you have three different packets, so to speak. And there should be three different options on each of those. I'm just the delivery boy here. These are some designs that were come up, and I think really what we're just looking for is from you is your initial response, whether it's specific or in general. And if you want to take some time to provide our response, obviously the town will take your response a couple days from now. I mean, obviously we're open to whenever you feel comfortable providing those responses.
Give us a little bit more
So
background.
here's
on what
Chelsea,
Hi,
as we speak. Thank
Chelsea.
you, Vice Mayor. Yeah. If you want to, I was just saying that we're looking for some of their feedback on these three different items, and if you want to give the background or something.
Yeah, so Chelsea O'Reilly, I'm the Public Works Manager. We, in this fiscal year's budget, Town Council approved some money to set aside to redo the island entrances, so at the north and at the south end of the island. So we've reached out to this company to give us some ideas and thoughts, some designs. So I'm just looking really for some input from you all, kind of if you can say which ones you like more than the others, or if there's certain aspects of it. This is very preliminary. We have to go back to the designer, and then of course make sure it's up to codes, things of that nature. So really just a feedback, input. You're more than welcome to take them home and reach out to me at a later date if you see something somewhere else that you like. This is very open and a fluent project, but we're looking to get it done hopefully by the end of the fiscal year.
Chelsea, would these signs be intended to be located where our current signs are?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
There are,
Why
if you
did-
look in each of the packet, there are very slight differences in the signs, even between something like they look alike, but they're not. I just was noticing that even these two here.
So that one,
Slight differences, welcome to and no welcome to. So pay
I
attention.
didn't like the font on one of them, so I took the initiative and responded to the designer. So that's why you kind of see two similar versions of
This
that
one's
one.
hard to read.
That's exactly my point. That's the one I asked for the difference, so.
And for the public record, we're trying to show some of the images, so anybody watching later on or now could
Yep.
see.
I look forward to this project. This will be nice.
It's a fun project, but it's the entrance to the island, and so we want to make a point and make a statement. So, but we also want to incorporate the feel and vibes of Fort Myers Beach. So,
My first pass on this is more our feel and vibe than those two-tone, that stuff.
Which one is that, Megan?
This one is a little bit more fun and funkier than some of the, I mean, that's more so formal.
Oh, I got you, the two-tone.
Well,
Yeah.
your target audience in this one is all wrong. Someone in a
Yes.
suit?
Yeah, I was gonna.
You're not coming to the beach?
That would be
Looks
me.
like New
That would be me.
Yeah, it's northerny.
This looks like something in Maine.
I thought the same thing.
Okay.
But I wanted to give you all some options, and if you see something you like on one that you think might look good on, you know, the main one, let me know, please, because I'm looking for some feedback. I'm not an artistic person. I don't claim to be. I'm just trying to reach out to some open minds.
All of these.
Other than the guy in the suit,
I'm
this one,
opinionated.
you see the beach more
Yeah.
than a full. And you can't go wrong with dolphins.
Yes, sir.
All of these depictions coincide with the sign ordinance that we have as far as height and?
Well, I first wanted to start with design, and then we can get into the details. That's why I brought Jason in on this and see what we can do.
It'll all be one big variance for you, so, no, I'm joking.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, you know, whether you're gonna have to give a variance just for the town to have their signs as opposed to all of our businesses.
I noticed
First
the
things
life
first
ring's
is let's
gone.
look at the prettiness and the fun and funkiness and the concept, and then you'll make it work within code.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, that was the whole thing, as far as, we're looking at different things, and as an example, I prefer this one. Not so much the font, but
Which one is
the
that?
sun.
The same as.
Sun.
The
Same
sun
one we're all on.
The one with the sun as opposed to the picture. And it's just, okay, that's great. How high is this thing gonna be? Oh, geez, 140, no, that's not.
Don't look at height yet. We'll get there.
You know, I'm looking at the sign saying, yeah, that's what I want, but no, I can't have that. That's where I'm really coming from. That's why I want the question as far as does these drawings and dimensions conform to our sign ordinance? If not, then okay, we have to look somewhere else.
Well, we have to rewrite the sign ordinance, so we can make it work.
Just kidding, just
Anything
kidding.
else from you guys?
That was it,
Community
just
development?
being the delivery boy for Chelsea.
Thank
looks
you.
good.
I appreciate it. And like I said, if you have any comments, please feel free to email me or see me individually. Or if you've seen a sign at a different beach that you say, maybe we can incorporate this aspect, please let me know. This is very preliminary, but it's a fun project that we want to get in front of council here before the end of the fiscal year.
Jason, do you want these design engineer standards so you don't have to print them back up from us?
Sure,
All right.
good idea.
Thank you.
All 50 pages, thank you. Nothing else from you?
That's it for, what's that?
All right. Items for next month's agenda?
No, nothing else.
Nothing? All right, any public comment on today's meeting? Life?
Madam Chair, Leon Moyer. Did I call you mayor last time? If I did, I apologize.
No, and no.
Okay. I'd like to mention that I appreciate your minutes. I often go back and review them, and it's also nice to have the videos available for past meetings. I'd like to ask you to address, as a town, the Parks and Rec ordinance from 97-05. That's a lengthy ordinance. It's very vague in some areas. As a matter of fact, one place it has 200, the numeral 200. It doesn't say whether that's feet, meters, yards, or miles. So they left that out. It needs some updates, but that was the one that I was referring to when it comes to using motorboats in swimming areas. And it appears to me that the way this ordinance is written, we should have designated swimming areas and designated vessel areas for watercraft. And I don't know if this town has done that. And someday, if someone gets injured by a propeller on a motorboat, I see a serious liability issue. And for safety issues, I think the town should address both the ordinance and the enforcement of those provisions relating to safety in the waters and the parks of the town. Thank you for doing your part here this morning. You're always forthright and also forward-looking. You're trying to address the issues of making the town look better with the signs, but I don't know, maybe there should be considered a limit someday as to how many people this island can support, both visitors and occupants. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Joanne Champ. Two things, well, three things. First of all, thanks you guys for your service. It's always good to watch you interact. You do a great job. Secondly, as per our joint meeting, Megan and I are going to meet and talk about the post-disaster reconstruction ordinance. It's been worked on since, about 09, 05. I have all the background information that I'll give to her and Jason so it can move forward with that. Not to be confused with the ordinance that we have in place, like of who does what at the time of the disaster. Who's in charge, who's on first. This is how you rebuild. And hopefully we never need to use it, but it's really a critical thing, needs to be done. It should have been done 10 years ago, so I hope that you guys will really force yourselves to get this done in the next few months. It'd be great to get it done before hurricane season, although it's awful close now. But every year we say we need to do it before hurricane season. And then last thing, you guys got to see the designs before we did. We're really excited about that. And remember, I understand your feeling about the size, but one of them will be the main entry feature. So it's going to be big. And it maybe in coordination with the redesign of the base of the bridge that we're in conversation with Lee County right now. And where that might be, it might be right at Crescent Beach Park when the trolleys pull up. Who knows where it is, but it'll be in the plan and it will be big. And remember though, whatever that little symbol is, you like the sun, there's different things, whatever that symbol is, people are going to want to repeat it on t-shirts. It's going to be that thing that when you see it, you know you were at Fort Myers Beach. So that's really important when you visualize that. It's going to be something that may be used over and over and over within our town. And what should that feel like? So see where your energy takes you with that. So thank you.
Thank you. No more public comment? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're out of here. Thank you all. There are your packets also, Jason, so you don't have to print all 50 pages or whatever up doing our part.